Afternoon all. I thought we can continue the Evolution of Style series and go on to the first World Championship match encounter between Alexander Alekhine and Max Euwe. So this was in 1935. Chessgames.com is a good site if you want to look at the World Championship matches, by the way. The notes to this match, so Alexander needing a new opponent for his next title defence, and he was unwilling still to play Capablanca again. Bogolubov is not at all credible at this point. So he picked Max Euwe because, well, he had lost 2 matches to Bogolubov. If he had picked Max as a safe opponent, well, his plans did go slightly wrong in this match, as we're going to see. So hopefully on this channel we'll go over the key decisive World Championship games of the 1935 match. And the reason why these World Championship matches are important for the examination of the evolution of style is basically they're basically the highest profile, matches of the year usually, because it's usually assumed that they're also the strongest players playing. Although some people might dispute sometimes that the strongest players aren't playing. And in fact, of course, you could say, well, what about, it should have been Capablanca, not Max Euwe. But anyway, the world's attention is usually placed heavily on World Championship matches. So the openings, etc., the ideas are going to influence a lot of players' styles. And the media is going to pick up the games, etc., to maximise that. So what are the openings used in this match, etc.? Let's pay close attention here. So d4 from Alexander, and we have actually after d5 we have the Slav defence played by Max over here. Slav defence, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, not minding temporary pawn loss here. After d takes c4, white plays now a4, so he's trying to prevent b5 from black, and maybe trying to get this pawn either by an e3 later or by a knight e5 takes c4 route. After bishop f5, we see the preferred choice here is knight e5, so not playing e3. The advantage of this, potentially, this knight manoeuvre, it frees up potentially for f3, which might be useful for, say, e4 later. Knight bd7 and knight takes c4 is played. Okay, black has the bishop outside the pawn chain though, so 3 active bishops here, and controlling key central square e4. In this position, queen c7 is played, which has the intention potentially of an e5 break to try and undermine white's pawn centre, white's control over central squares. And if white ever protects, he's going to risk having an isolated queen's pawn. So there's a critical position here actually, where white refuses to play a move like e3 or f3, and instead the move g3 is played, being content to fianchetto bishop across the diagonal, where it seems okay, it's not going to be challenging this bishop on this diagonal, but it will be supporting maybe e4 and a d5 break later. Black plays now e5 immediately, which is shaking a bit white's control of the dark squares, but tactically black is inviting a self-pin with this e5, so maybe it's got some slight controversy to it, but this is, if this issue can be solved, then black has no structural issues to deal with. If this pin which is about to emerge is not such a major problem, then black has 3 pieces, freer active pieces, and with few structural major long-term issues. So d takes e5, knight takes e5, and we see bishop f4, which looks initially like a very annoying pin. Black plays now knight fd7. Okay, and now we see bishop g2, bishop e6 is played in this position. So bishop e6 preempts perhaps an e4 move, kicking the bishop, but it's coming off that diagonal. So you might think, well, what was the idea of this? Well, it is challenging this knight and getting rid of potentially the pressure on the pin to challenge this knight on c4, exerting that pressure. Okay, and white plays now knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and can the pin really be exploited here? Well, we'll do a closer forensic examination in a second pass through the game, which I usually keep for overviews and summaries, but let's just get on with what happened in the game here. So white castled and black played bishop e7, queen c2, which provides possibilities like queen e4. Maybe also we can see the queens here. This knight possibilities are something to be borne in mind now. Tactical possibilities on the loose queen on c7. After rook d8, rook fd1, black castles and connects rooks. And now in fact the resource is used, the tactical resource, knight b5, for positional gain here. This knight can reroute quickly to d4 now by hitting that queen and using the pin on the c6 pawn. Black trades one pair of rooks off, and now we see queen a5, and the knight reroutes now to d4. So challenging this bishop, which would create structural damage. Black is not keen for knight e6. What does he do? Well, he doesn't do bishop d5. That looks a bit dangerous with this loose knight here in any case. So this queen is still protecting e5 here. That's responsibility of the queen. Bishop c8, but now with this queen protecting e5, Alexander finds something quite nifty in this position. He plays actually the move b4. Okay, so if queen takes b4, clearly bishop takes e5 is pretty good. But you might think, well, bishop takes b4. Now this is a little bit more involved. Knight b3. Now there's two loose pieces here and the queen attacked. And this is a variation I checked out earlier. So queen c7. There's a key move here, exploiting both loose pieces. Queen e4, hitting both pieces. And this is a bit of a disaster for black, tactically. Okay, because say bishop d6, we can now take on, pardon me, no, we don't take on d6 here. In this position, actually, this is good tactical test. If we take on d6, it's not so hot, and it's quite subtle actually. In this position, what the refutation of black's position would be. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Clue is it's not rook takes d6. Rule that out. Okay, queen d4 would be a crushing move here, and just undermining e5 protection. So say, well, the only move is if rook d8, you just play bishop takes e5, huge pin. Can't do anything about that. The only move would be like g5, and that's awful. You just take, well, white's got a big advantage. Fractured the pawns, king safety's damaged, so that wouldn't be too hot. But g5 would be like virtually the only move here. Okay, so if bishop takes e5 in this position, sorry, I mean rook takes d6 with the idea of bishop takes e5, black has resources in this position worth noting. Check, and then not bishop h3, but even better would be just queen takes b3 here, and black's fine. So this is the tactical conception, which shows Alekhine's depth, of tactics. That in this position, this b4 is good on bishop takes b4. Knight b3 as a springing retreat for queen e4 to exploit loose pieces. But Max plays just queen c7, holding that knight on e5. But yeah, the rerouting of the knight has meant increased pressure on c6, and of course the fianchetto's on c6, the queen's on c6, and this pawn is now poised for c6, and c6 holds up d5, and it's setting off a chain reaction to do with black's king safety. If d5 can be undermined by further attacking c6, then there's a route rather created to black's king here. So b5 it is, huge pressure on c6 here from these pieces, and the pawn on b5. So black plays horrible concession. Otherwise, white's simply threatening, to take and then knight c6 and is going to win a piece potentially. Stuff like that. Horrible things are going to happen. So c5 is a horrible move to have to play, blocking in the own bishop on e7, weakening d5. White goes now for the light squares, knight f5. If black really wants to give up the light square bishop, then he's left with a bad bishop really, and even more pressure on e5. Here he plays actually f6, and white plays knight e3, another nifty move, just eyeing d5 now, and also maybe knight c4 is also dangerous. Black plays bishop e6, preventing knight c4 a little bit. But now bishop d5, strategic exchange, getting rid of black's better bishop, leaving black with this hemmed in bishop. But also, this route, this access route, still important for black's, king safety implications. Black took on d5, Alexander took with the rook. Now after queen a5, the knight jumps back with no risk of any bishop f5s anymore. Of course, there is an invitation for this check, which is used up, queen e1 check. King just moves, and now bishop d8. But this position is now, even with the queen sitting on e1, hitting f2, Alexander is not concerned about getting some cooperation from the rook on f8 here. He plays very precisely. Very specifically, he plays bishop takes e5, positively inviting pressure along the f file. After takes, though, black's not going to be in any position to exploit that here, because now he plays a very, very powerful move, rook d7. And I wonder if you can see, well, I think there's a clue here. There's a major threat in this position now, a tactical threat with this rook eyeing that 7th rank in both directions, but in particular two sensitive squares around black's king, that actually a tactical threat exists here of knight h6 check. Well, for example, let's give black a token move. We can see that knight h6 check is crushing. If takes, queen h7 is mate. If king h8, well, okay, knight f7 and rook takes d8 both look tempting. You might be concerned about queen f2. Okay, so what is the crushing move here? Possibly, without checking this with an engine, knight f7 is okay to play here, and then rook takes d8. But we'll do a proper forensic investigation in the second pass through this game. But this looks incredibly dangerous for black, if nothing else. So, to parry this threat in this position, black plays bishop f6. Okay. But white still now plays knight h6 check. Black plays king h8, and whilst the bishop is not a tactical target now on d8, there's a very strong move here, just queen takes c5, and this compels actually black's resignation in this position. He's hitting the rook clearly and protecting f2 at the same time. Let's quickly put engines on now So say rook e8, check. Actually, in this position, queen c4 is picked up as a crushing resource, threatening queen g8 and the smothered mate. And if g takes here, queen f7 is mating free. So okay, so knight h6 check and queen takes c5. So after this rook move, we have this. You might think actually queen c4 immediately. Forget playing the check. Queen c4 immediately, just threatening queen g8 then. With the smothered mate is mate in 4. It's a forced mate in 4. That's the crushing move here. Just to demonstrate that again. So if it takes queen f7, that's black's defenseless on h7 here. But let's go through this game technically now to explore some key variations. Okay, so a Slav defense, and we see a temporary pawn sacrifice, the knight being used to recapture that pawn slowly, white not touching either the e pawn or the f pawn here, but instead fianchettoing the bishop now, black trying to undermine white's dark square control a bit without any structural issues really. In this position, okay, we get this position after knight takes, knight takes. We might question tactically queen d4 here. Queen d4 is actually picked up as a reasonable alternative to castling actually. So it's a bit of a forcing move we should investigate. If f6, maybe that holds for black. Should be okay. Okay, so that was one question to ask. Let's go further into the game. After castle's knight b5, we saw this knight d4 hitting the bishop. Now bishop d5 we saw, well, I imagine bishop e5 is the move here. And in this position, okay, yes, bishop takes g7, desperado. It's damaging black's king position, free of charge, winning a pawn. So this isn't so hot for black. So that's that. So that's why, okay, that this bishop had to go back. It seems not too many moves to explore there. In fact, is bishop c8 one of the only moves? Because it means actually black's really on a back foot here. A back foot here after bishop c8. b4, strong move. And white's increasing the advantage quite systematically. It seems anyway with b5, although engine seems to like knight b5 there. But b5 looks like a dangerous move. And white's advantage is growing. The light square control, you can see the white advantage technically is going up here, up and up. Especially after this light square bishop exchange. This looks like a strong positional move as well. And you know, the 7th rank d7 of course has been weakened. So white's getting a very dangerous infiltration. And this is totally engine approved, this bishop e5 getting onto the 7th rank. And this knight h6, it's as though, you know, Houdini really likes Alexander Alekhine's play in this game. So it would really be very crushing after rook e8, just queen c4 is a totally crushing response. So black resigns here. Okay, so that was quite an interesting first game of the World Championship, which probably highlighted to Alekhine, yes, he's going to win this match, and Max Hover's much better choice than Capablanca, and certainly there wasn't much credibility with Bogolubov. So okay, let's carry on in the next video to have a look at other games. Hope you enjoyed this one. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.